Welcome back, everybody, and today, as you can see behind me, I have my personal tree farm design. Now this is not the most efficient, not the best farm. It is my personal farm that I like to build because it's fairly simple to understand, and honestly it's as efficient as I need it to be. And it works just fine. You can see another redstone device in the background, just ignore that. But as you can see, it's somewhat big. I want to say it's 13 by 11. And if I go ahead and go on the inside here, all I have to do is pull this lever, place the sapling down. You can hold right click here and it'll just keep on going. And as you can tell, it's also really quite fast. And today we'll be going ahead and looking at everything there is to see about this farm. I'm not going to do a block for block tutorial, just because it is a rather large device compared to my other contraptions. We're just going to look at each and every little part of it, and that will be all enough. Let's go ahead and get rid of these leaves. I placed down a sapling, but it grew in the time for me to press record. Alright. That's enough clearage for me. So this is what I'm thinking of as the heart of the device. It's basically what decides what to do and which components to activate. And of course, this is just a breakdown from this piece of the device here. As you can see, it's just copy and pasted over to here. So when a solid block gets put through here and this piston receives an update, you'll see that this redstone line gets activated. And if this was hooked up to other things, specifically if this scaffolding was hooked up over to that device, this open fence gate would push this log right over here, and then once it was pushed over, it would reactivate the dispenser, and it would also pull back the trapdoor. Not trapdoor, fence gate. Alright, and the way this works is through quasi-connectivity. So this redstone torch powers this redstone dust, which, since it's pointing into where this log would be when it's here, it will, well, as you can see, it powers this trapdoor. Not trapdoor, fence gate. And because of quasi-connectivity, it is also technically powering this piston right here. So when this piston receives an update from me placing a block here, so block update, it will turn on, and then once it receives an update again when the log is no longer there, it will retract. And the reason we're using a fence gate, that was the right word, the fence gate right here, is because the fence gate cannot get powered by redstone, or like it can't transmit power. So if I put a fence gate right here, this fence gate is no longer going to open, and neither will this piston extend, which is how it technically detects that there is no log right here. Now on top of this fence gate, over here in this piston wall, we have log blocks, because it's basically mandatory that these have to be log blocks. They can be stripped, they can be birched or dark oak or whatever. They just have to be log blocks. They might even be able to be planks, but I'm not gonna roll the chances on that being a correct fact, so just use logs. That's my recommendation. Anyway, so the way this piston receives updates is by the pulsing of this powered rail. Let's just get rid of you so you don't make a ruckus. And that is because when you pull that lever, this redstone gets activated, which pushes this observer into making an observer clock, and that then pulses the powered rail. In the same situation, we also have this redstone powering this piston here, which pushes this observer into being an observer clock, triggering our dispenser, which makes an absolute racket. And then, when a log is here, this piston will extend, powering this pulse extender, which just means that all of our devices will have the correct length of pulse. If it was, some weird short pulse, some of the devices might end up getting stuck, and so this just kind of regulates the length of the pulse. Anyway, that then leads into this line here and this line here, and these two repeaters go off to our piston walls, which are these things right here. And if you're building this based off of what you see, block for block, here you go, there's a decent couple of shots for that. And of course, make sure that this comparator is facing this way. If it faces this way, the timing will be basically irregular, which means that the piston walls are going to break just a little bit if your pulse from the log is not regular. And so you would have to basically rebuild the layers that get out of place if they do break, because that's just how sticky blocks work. Although, because these walls are fairly simple, it shouldn't be too much of a hassle for you, which was something I considered while designing this tree farm. Now for the double piston extender with the log blocks and the fence gate, so that's what's on top of this fence gate here. That's triggered by, this is just an example line, but when you open the trapdoor, with a redstone pulse, you'll see that that triggers things to happen. And so if I get things in shot, button pressed, it'll sweep the logs out by one block and then retract them really quickly. And if you don't already know this mechanic, if you have scaffolding here, this scaffolding is this one that I'm looking at is currently supported by this trapdoor. When I open it, it is no longer supported, and so the distance from a support, which you can see on the right side of my screen here, it is under the green true where you'll see distance equals 1. And if I look at this scaffolding on its right, which is supported, it says distance equals 0. And of course, because of the way scaffolding is programmed, every scaffolding on top of this will also have distance of 1. But when this is closed, it goes to a distance of 0, and that can be detected by this observer. Now the second mechanic going into this piston extender is the fact that when you have a redstone lamp, or an observer going into a redstone lamp being detected by another observer, you get one extra pulse out the end. So that gets 2 because we have one redstone lamp. As you can see, if I just have one observer, if I have no redstone lamps, you just get a single pulse out the end. And then of course, if I have 2, you get 3 pulses, and if I have 3, you get 4 pulses. So it just adds 1 extra pulse per redstone lamp you have in the device. And that's how this device works. It functions off by the way, this mechanic is functioning off the fact that a redstone lamp takes 1 tick to unpower. So if you power it like so, as you can see, compared to the indicator on that observer, you'll be able to see that it stays powered for just a little longer, which increases the number of pulses going through the system. And that's how this system works. Now over here to the piston wall, fairly simple redstone. If I look at it from this side, you might be able to get a better idea of what's going on. If you watch the pistons, I'll play it a couple times. There you go. So this piston extends, pushing this piston and then whatever sticky block it's attached to and whatever is attached to the sticky block forward. And then the piston in this column then gets extended by the redstone on these obsidian blocks. And of course, you're able to do the redstone line every other block because quasi-connectivity powers so this block would power that piston, and this block would power a piston that's down here if it were there. Of course, make sure these repeaters are set to 3, and these repeaters should be set to 1. It just makes your farm slightly faster. And then the reason I'm using fence gates here is because if these push into leaves, because of course the piston walls in a tree farm are meant to break the leaves to drop the saplings. It used to be that people would use regular oak logs just because it wouldn't interfere with the growth of the tree. But now, because you can do double piston extenders like this, you don't have to worry about that. And so what you can do is replace the breaking, or the blocks that break the leaves, with basically a transparent block, which allows any saplings, if I grab some saplings, here we go, to basically fall down. As you can see, sometimes they get caught on like honey, but if that happens, they will fall down on your next. There we go. So if I extend this and retract it, as you can see, that sapling just fell down. So it doesn't matter too much if they get caught on the honey. And of course that just means you get less saplings going off and getting trapped, you know, in these spaces here because of items getting pushed inside of the blocks, and then inside of the slime blocks, and then inside of the pistons, and then popped out in the back here. So that no longer happens if you use fence gates here. You might also be able to use fence posts, but it's slightly less efficient just because you do have that hitbox, which unfortunately does happen for some of these fence gates. But it's not too much of a problem because you have open space in the back and technically open space in the front too. Alright, and then finally, I guess second to finally, because I did build an extra device here to test out, or to check out. Let's grab some logs, oak logs, there we go. We have this just basically piston pusher system here. So I've placed blocks here. All of those will get pushed forward, like so. And so you have an observer facing down. This has to be 4 ticks because of course this observer both detects the oak log getting in place and the oak log getting pushed away. So you have to make sure that the pulse is long enough that basically the 2 detections combine into 1 detection because of how long that timing is. Then that goes into this observer here, which ensures that the only pulse going through is a single pulse going into this block, which powers this redstone. This redstone powers this block, or this piston and this piston, and because it's just a redstone dot, technically, it also powers this piston because of course it's, well, I don't even have to explain this anymore because now they render it as a cross, so you can see quite clearly that this redstone points into this piston. And then that's also detected by this observer, which powers this block. This block powers this block, or this piston, and this block also powers this piston by quasi-connectivity. No redstone dot needed at the top, of course. And that is the piston pusher design that you can see right here, and also right here. Alright, and then finally we have this piston wall design here. So if I go ahead and place some logs in here, you'll see that this log gets pushed over here, detected by this observer. This observer goes into a block. You could technically put that observer going into this piston, but unless you very precisely space out your tree farm, when it gets full of logs, and it still has more logs to push in this direction, what you'll want to do is put furnaces like so, and that way, well, also blocks right here. And that way, no logs will push your redstone away from where it's supposed to be and break the system. But if you have a 13 block gap in front of the pistons, so that's 1 air block plus the 12 blocks it can push away, you don't even have to worry about that furnace, and you can technically put these together. But that goes into this piston wall design here. You can tile this out as far as the redstone signal will reach. And so anyway, when I place this final log block, you'll be able to see it gets pushed over and then out. And then if this were a larger setup, you would get a giant cube of logs ready to harvest manually. Or alternatively, what you could do is use a TNT duper or just regular TNT dispenser at that. And then with that, you can use TNT to break the logs, which is all the more automatic, although I personally don't like messing around with TNT dupers too much in single player worlds, just because it's not exactly fun when your netherite gear gets blown up. So, you know, I don't mess around with that too much. But anyway, just one last pass around for the device here. Get some fairly still shots, because I know I've had one single complaint in the comments about not having enough still shots. So here's some more still shots of the device that you can copy. Oh yeah, one extra thing that I added in to this final design, or like this compiled design, is that this has been around for quite a while for tree farms, but you would basically lead hoppers over to this space between this piston extender and this piston wall, and you'd basically fill these chests with bone meal, and that would go into your dispenser so you don't have to manually fill it. It's not entirely necessary because, especially in the early game of your single player world, you're not going to have a bajillion bone meal. You're probably only going to have enough to, you know, fill that up. And then anyway, some final still shots of the device in case you really want them. Here we go. Let's look over here and over here. Okay, and that's the whole device. So that's going to do it for today's episode. So like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Also, I guess I might as well mention it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks, and then any sort of block that would block the growth of a tree. So it can't be wood or something like that. Just in case you didn't get a good enough shot to count that. Alright, that's going to do it. Bye.